Well, we know a freedom-loving American from right up here in Hamilton, Ohio, who, of course, spent his most glorious years at The Ohio University in Athens, Ohio. He is none other than our good friend from The Athletic, Jay Moore. Jay, you're looking mighty sharp today. I mean, you got the button down going, the whole deal. You got somewhere to go today? What do you got going on?
Just here. I had to class it up for the show.
Oh, boy. Well, you'd be the first. I mean, look at these two guys I'm working with, for crying out loud. I mean, come on.
Well, what's the age? I heard you guys talking before I came on. What's the age cutoff where you're not allowed to take a glove to a ball game anymore? Is it 18?
I never have a problem with people bringing a glove to a ball game because you never know.
I don't know. Mine's like 16, 15.
16 was always mine, Jay. 16 was what I said.
See, but you guys don't have kids.
Well, I was just
okay. I have sat in the stands in games that I wasn't broadcasting, and down the third base line a little bit. Jay, you've been down there, and all of a sudden those rockets come flying down, foul ball into the stands. If you've got little kids with you, man, you got to be on it. So if there's a dad who wants to bring a glove to a game, I say God bless him.
Ryan Braun nearly broke my arm in one of those seats. You were probably broadcasting the game. It was the first 12:35 game that ever appeared on Fox Sports Ohio because they didn't used to do those day games. And I took my son. We were in the front row down the left field line. He turned on one. I stupidly stood in there and tried to catch it barehanded, and it hit my forearm, and I couldn't use my arm the rest of the day. I couldn't even take my wallet out of my pocket. It fell right at my feet, and I picked it up and handed it to my son, and he was thrilled, but I was really, really sore.
Yeah, those things, as my old broadcast partner Ron Santo used to say, Hall of Famer Ron Santo, those foul balls come to eat. There's no mercy there. All right, here we are. We are officially less than 2 weeks away from the NFL draft. At The Athletic, you've conducted, I don't know how many years you've done it now because The Athletic's not been around all that long. You asked fans to basically give a first through, seventh round of their picks, and then you listed the most, the second most, so on and so forth. When you do that drill, based on how many you've done, first of all, how many have you done, and do they even come close to what actually happens?
Honestly, this is the second year we've done it. So I started in 18, but I started after the draft, and the reporters in Detroit were the first ones that we saw do it, and we liked the idea, and of course we stole it. And I don't feel bad about stealing an idea from a teammate, from a colleague. And I do think the readers like it. I honestly can't remember last year's how accurate people were. That's the thing about mock drafts. Like, everybody does them. You do all these different iterations, and then once the draft happens, they just go out the window. Like, nobody goes back and grades them to see how accurate or inaccurate or it's just all it's just fodder leading up to the draft. And it is fun, but I think a lot of people realize what the exercise is and don't take it too seriously. But that's what I tried to have fun with this piece. I invited people to send me their mocks and got close to 90. It made for a long week I put everybody's picks in an Excel spreadsheet and sorted it all out and came up with the composite picks. And it's fun. It's a fun way to engage with readers and subscribers. And I hope the fans are wrong, that the fans' pick in the first round was Kalijah Cansey, the defensive tackle from Pittsburgh, and not opposed to going defensive line in the first round. But I just think the comparisons there with him and Aaron Donald are number one, are not fair. And number two, might be a stretch anyhow, because you just look at what the Bengals typically prefer out of those defensive linemen, and it's taller, longer arms. And Cansey's a terrific player, but he's got shorter arms in their template. He's shorter. I think he's going to have his work cut out for him to live up to that first-round billing.
All right, based on what we know, because we've not had you, Jay, on the program since the Bengals signed Scott, since they signed Irv Smith Jr., they addressed clearly the safety position after Von Bell and Jesse Bates leave. We know that Dax Hill will be the other starting safety. Based on where the team is now, what they've done so far in free agency, how would you rank 1, 2, 3 what position they're most likely to draft in the first round. Now, I know it's dependent upon the 27 teams that pick in front of them, but in a perfect world, it would be 1, 2, 3, what?
Well, I don't know about the order, but I think by the time Friday night ends, they should have an offensive lineman, preferably a tackle, a cornerback, and a tight end. And even the Irv Smith signing, that's still a position in need. He's had injury history throughout his career, his young career. So he's on a very cheap prove it deal. That was not a fix. That was, I don't want to say a prayer. It's a solid investment, and there is a very high ceiling there. But you can't be lulled into this sense of security where, okay, tight end is no longer an issue. It's still a huge issue. I don't see them reaching for a tight end in the first round. Had they not signed Smith, maybe tight end would be the odds-on favorite to be a first-round pick. But I think that at least opens up the options where they can go any way. The way the top 27 goes is really going to dictate that, because I think if Darnell Wright specifically is there, then he would be the pick, the right tackle from Tennessee. If he's not there, I think you're going to see them lean back on their tried and true plan of stocking that secondary, and they don't need a cornerback right away. And they signed Sidney Jones. They signed a number 4 cornerback, but Cheeto coming off of the ACL, Cam Taylor-Britt still being young, it just where those contracts are going to eventually come due, and you need a lot of good corners. You can never have enough corners, and this is this draft hits them well. I think they're going to have their pick of 2 or 3 corners that could really help them in that 28 spot. So those are the 3 positions. I know a lot of people are big on running back, but I still think you can wait till the 4th round to attack that, and then maybe again in the 7th, and then definitely with undrafted free agency. And I do want to say, you rattled off the free agents. Thank you for not bringing up Orlando Brown Jr., because I don't know if it was the last time I was on the show, but one of the times I was on the show, you asked me if he was a possibility. I said, no way.
Well, I don't think anybody saw that coming, Jay.
Right, yeah. The Bengals didn't even think that was going to happen. But, yeah, I'm willing to admit when I was wrong.
Well, you weren't wrong. I think that everybody just looked at it and thought that no, that they're not going to do it. They've never shown a track record of necessarily going out and getting the biggest guy at any position. I mean, they've gotten some good guys through the years, and they found some really nice bargains through the years, just in recent years, especially on the defensive side. But not the biggest guy fish in the ocean, so to speak. And that's what they got with Brown Jr. But just to clarify, to make sure I understood this, because we were debating this the other day. Jones is here to replace Eli Apple, right? No chance Apple comes back?
I wouldn't say no chance, but it feels like they've tired of his antics, and he's still available.
Yeah.
So if there was interest there, you think it would have happened by now. So yeah, he is signed to be the number 4 corner, and the first one in case there is an injury that could fill in at one of those outside spots.
Okay, the Mixon thing. All right, we had a lengthy conversation about this, and perhaps you have some knowledge of this situation. If I ran the Bengals, and clearly I don't, and I never will, but there are so many different sort of layers to this thing, and different compartments to this thing. Clearly, number one being the legal part of it. I mean, what ultimately is going to happen here with Mixon and so forth, charges, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so if you separate that now into the player Mixon, and we've talked a lot about him when you've been on the show, about what he's done, what he's not done, whatever the case may be. It seems to me, though, that if the Bengals are getting at least some kind of information from wherever or whoever, that this is not going to lead to serious legal trouble for Mixon. It seems to me that I would be having the conversation with Mixon and his people about the possibility of redoing his contract to see if he would go along with it before we get to the draft, long before we get to June 1st, when they can cut him loose and save a lot of money on the salary cap. Do you think that would be a wise decision? Do you think it's going on?
Yes, I do. I think it would be. I think it's a mandatory decision, and I do think that if it hasn't happened yet, it will happen before the draft. They need to know where they stand, whether he's at least willing to consider taking a pay cut. You can't pay a running back $12.8 million this year when you're talking about extending Joe Burrow, possibly extending T. Higgins. Just what running back in what it has become in the league anyhow, and then you're starting to see that fall off from Joe Mixon, and the Bengals structured this contract, this 4-year, $48 million deal that they did a few years back. They structured that with this in mind, where it's very easy to get out of if he does fall off the cliff. And they don't do that. They like to honor contracts, and that's one of the selling points when they negotiate is, hey, you're going to get every dollar of this deal, because there are very few guaranteed contracts in the league, but it has to happen. And I don't know that you're not going to see the team cut Joe based on what these charges are. His court hearing, I believe, is Wednesday, coming up this coming Wednesday. So in 5 days, maybe it's continued. I don't know, but the decision about Joe Mixon's future with the team is going to come down to money. If they haven't cut him yet over these charges, and you can always hide behind, hey, he hasn't been proven guilty, but it's a bad look. It's just, I don't think you're going to see anything happen because of the court case. It's going to be his refusal, if he does refuse, to take a pay cut, because they are going to ask him if they haven't already, and it's probably going to be a significant one. You're probably going to be talking about going from 12.8 into the 5 million range.
You know Mixon a little bit. You think he's on board with that kind of thing? I mean, I know you don't have a crystal ball, and I know you're not his agent, but what do you think?
Well, I think that's where the court case comes into play, because I think the Bengals are going to value him more than other teams would. And maybe at first he says no and tries to see what's out there or what other teams, maybe his agent, Peter Schaefer, is already doing that and kind of seeing what his value would be if he was let go. But that hurts him. You've already got the pre-draft issue where he hit the woman on the day he turned 18, and everybody knows that story. So he came into the league with baggage, and he had, for the most part, had kept his nose clean until these recent incidents. And even the one that happened at his house, it was his house, but he wasn't charged with anything. But it's perception. It's a bad look, and that's going to affect your value. And I do, like I said, I think the Bengals are going to value him more than other teams will, and he's not going to be happy about taking a pay cut. But if that's your best offer, then it would make sense for him to stick around here, where he's comfortable with the offense, he's comfortable with the coaching staff. Everybody wants to play with Joe Burrow. He's been in a Super Bowl the last 2 years ago, AFC Championship game last year. We know what the shelf life of running backs is, and his time is running out. If he wants to win a ring, I think his best shot is to stay here in Cincinnati.
If he doesn't come back or agree to a pay cut, I believe they would have, Evans and Williams officially in the running backs room that's left. Would that put the Bengals in scramble mode at that point?
I don't think so, because you've seen it all across the league where these running backs. Look at the Chiefs last year. They won the Super Bowl with their primary running back being 7th round pick. Now, you can't predict that, but it's out there. It can happen. You see it all the time. Guys drafted in the 4th round, the 5th round, undrafted free agents. These running backs come from everywhere, and this is not a run-first offense. The main thing they need to do is get somebody in here that they really trust as a pass blocker. Yeah, it's great if he gives you juice in the run game, and you do need to have a solid run game. But I'd be stunned, even if Bijan Robinson, who is the consensus #1 overall running back available in the draft, even if he somehow falls to 28, I don't see them pulling that trigger. I don't see them taking a running back, before Saturday. I mean, maybe they take one in the 2nd or 3rd round, but they're not going to, I don't think they're going to know what they have with or don't have with Mixon by the draft. That the offer may be out there. The pay cut ultimatum, I guess you would say, might be out there, but you're not going to know for sure where that stands. So I don't think it would put them in scramble mode. The only thing it would do is maybe you see them really, really attack undrafted free agency and say, look, go get all the best running backs left and call them on the phone as soon as the draft ends and say, hey, we've got Joe Burrow, we've got a great offense, and we've got openings at running back. This is the best place for you to come and see how many of those guys they can sign.
One of your colleagues yesterday, and I'm drawing a blank on the name at The Athletic, wrote that article. I'm sure you're familiar with the one that I'm talking about, where the question was asked about the Bengals signing Huggins, signing Chase, signing Burrow, right? You know the article I'm talking about.
Yeah, Jeff Howe wrote that.
Okay. For those who didn't see it, I talked about it yesterday, and it got into, the financial structure and challenges the Bengals would face if they're paying Burrow whatever it is they're paying him, paying Huggins $20+ million, paying Chase $25 to $30+ million, and locking up all those guys long term, and some of the ramifications. And I thought most interestingly was the teams around the league that have a running backs room where they're spending over $20 or $30 million, in the wide receivers room, and how only two of them were spending more than, I think it was $10 million or $20 million, that even won a playoff game. What were your impressions of that article?
I get it, because I've talked about this in the past, not just paying two wide receivers that much money, but to have a wide receiver and a quarterback that are among the top paid in the league, it's just hard to do. And we saw it. Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers couldn't stay together in Green Bay, and Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes couldn't stay together in Kansas City. It's really hard to have those two, the two most premium positions, to have top 5 guys at both of those. And now you're talking about T. Higgins, which he wouldn't be at $20 million, which is probably where he would come in. He wouldn't be a top 5, but man, if you're going to load up on those 3 spots, that's going to make things really difficult. And the good thing is they've done a good job of drafting, and that's how you can make that work, is if you can just keep hitting in the draft and restocking that talent and relying on a lot of quality players that are on rookie deals. I asked out at the owners meeting in Phoenix a couple weeks ago, I asked Katie Blackburn that point blank, where yes, it's financially possible to sign all 3 of those guys, but is it responsible? Is it realistic? And her response was, we'll see, which I took that to mean they're going to try. They would like to keep T. Higgins around. It would make sense on both sides to try to get that done before the draft. From T's standpoint, if the Bengals go out and draft a T. Higgins-like wide receiver in the 2nd round, he loses all his leverage, not all of his leverage, but a lot of his leverage. And then the Bengals would like to get it done because that kind of helps them direct their draft. And do they need to take a wide receiver earlier rather than later? I don't know that you'll see anything get done, even if it gets done at all, if it'll get done before the draft. But the article itself, your original question about my impressions of it, it's always what Jeff did. For people that aren't familiar with it, he talked to NFL executives across the league about what the Bengals should do, and most of them were of the opinion they should not pay T. Higgins. Now, is that self-serving? Are they saying don't pay T. Higgins because we want him, we want to sign him? You always have to wonder about what the motivation is in those comments. But there's some truth there too, where yes, you're making life very, very hard if you have that much money wrapped up in 3 players. And I do think that there was some honesty in there, as well as maybe some self-serving aspects to it that might not be the best way to go, but this is such a dynamic offense, and those 3 are such a key part of it. I can see the Bengals wanting to figure out a way to make it work.
All right. Well, Jay, we appreciate your time very, very much. I know you're around the clock, nonstop, leading up to the draft, and shortly thereafter, schedule comes out shortly thereafter that. So we appreciate your time today. Thanks so much for joining us, Jay.
All right. Thanks for having me, Thom.
All right. Jay Morrison from The Athletic. Check that out, by the way, the mock draft thing. It was really interesting. A lot of fans that he said, he's uploading in Excel, 90 he said. And it's really interesting.